Good afternoon, folks. We're just going to talk through my sort of weekly outlook, areas I'm going to be paying attention to for buys and sales next week. Well, looking at what happened last week, the sort of resistance was confirmed and we sort of got that push down. And based on my thoughts last week, we could either confirm the resistance and push down. If we obviously get below this weekly resistance, there's a chance to push down into the 158, 500 area, and that was sort of completed last week, which was good to see. So looking at price on the monthly, we're still open, so there's 2 weeks left of the month. Sort of, you'd say, tapping into this support and reacted. So the support, confirmation of the support last month, that support hasn't been validated. We're still above the previous wick, so this could just be potentially some downside before we see further upside based on close that we did get last month. But what I am liking, if I was say like a downside, if I did have a downside bias, I like the fact that we're sort of putting in this lower resistance, and we're sort of trading now below this, you could say, mid-range support between the overall most recent support and resistance structure. So looking at the weekly, sort of confirmed that. So based on this weekly, what I do like is we respected the high, we've broke the low, and we have put in a strong week. Now some of that was news related, so take that with a pinch of salt. But I do like the fact that we are below this resistance here, and this was sort of the area I was paying attention to last week, in a sense that what this could be is, it could be this, could also be a deeper pullback to do this, but it also could be, if we close below this support or this resistance, price could come up, and if we respect this, it could be this. Or I'm also thinking that as well, we could come above, and as we start to come back below this level, then that could be potentially areas to sell to potentially fill that wick and continue. However, I am still very much bullish on price overall in terms of higher time frames, but I am liking what I'm seeing in terms of downside. We are starting to break down and trade back in this previous range that we were in prior to breaking out. So if I want to see upside or be confident of upside, I would like to see daily candles closing above this weekly resistance, or daily resistance, sorry, this daily resistance, and closing above this support, sort of mid-range support, you could say, or this mid-range range between these two areas, because we're obviously below this. So what this could be is any pull up could be a reaction for downside. Price could also pull up into this mid-range support, because again we failed to close above it on Friday, and we could pop above this, but if we don't close above, it could just be a deeper retracement for again further downside, because we are creating lower resistance and the sort of structure has changed on the daily from this, putting in lower highs and lower lows. So very much open-minded when it comes to buying and selling next week, but I've just marked up a couple of areas where I feel make sense to buy and sell from, and similar to last week, I'm just marking these areas up. If these options come in and around my trade session, I might look to trade them. If they come after, it's just going to be reflecting on what happened in and around them, and was there options in and around those areas. So looking at this on the 4-hour, pretty straightforward for me. Just looking at buys first and foremost. Buys above here are going to make a lot more sense to me, because it's changed in structure to the upside. We're very much still below, like I mentioned, this daily resistance zone. So if we break above here, we're going to be above daily resistance. We're going to be above the daily resistance zone. We're also price also going to be above this daily support. So I prefer to buy away from all these levels rather than buy into them. So if I just look at my alert, buys above 162.336 makes sense because it's changing structure on the 4 hour time frame back to the upside. I like above that price point rather than above Friday's daily high. So you could say, well, above here makes sense, because we're breaking the high, but I would prefer to just wait a little bit longer and actually clear this resistance zone. And the reason for that is just because it's above the zone and it's also above hourly support. So if I just go to the hour, clearly see here that there's a little bit of a support here. So if I just say, for example, draw this zone from where the support is, clearly see that we tapped into it. So one thing I wouldn't want to do is buy like here and price tap into this area and come down, or have some form of reaction. So that's why we just like to be buying above here. So either wait for structure, come up to here, and then close above and break and give me that, or hold structure above. So that's sort of what I'm looking at on that sort of price point. So that's based on the 4 hour. And again, this level here is the exact same level as my previous weekly outlook. So it's just another area to buy. And if I just look at my sort of little message for that, so yeah, so buying above here makes sense for me because it would be buying above 4 hour support and price would be within previous 4 hour range. So if I'm playing a range play, I want to buy from the bottom to test the opposite end of the range. So buying opportunities were from above this level last Tuesday. So what I'm sort of talking about with that is I have this previous 4 hour range which we were working in here. And when give me 1 second, I just clear this. So when I was talking about this last week, this candle here closed inside the range and it offered buys to top of the range. So it's the exact same. If price comes in and above this range, I would like it to hold above this support zone, and then I can look to buy up that way. So that's sort of what I'm thinking of. And if I just go to Tuesday last week, here's the opportunity which came outside of my trade session, but price closed within the zone, above the zone. We come back down, respected the zone and the previous 4 hour support here and previous structure here, and then closed inside, and then that's where price gave the continuation to the upside. So kind of similar to last week. I just want to be seeing what happens in the round here. This sort of is my no trade zone in here. But we can clearly see how there was a great option to trade within this zone based on the 30-minute time frame. Last week, let me just bring this little exit over here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But this was my no trade zone. I didn't want to trade between this 4 hour support and this 4 hour support and the zone within here. But clearly see that this candle tells me pay attention. There's a lot of volume. It's at London Open, so there is an option there to potentially take a buy through there up to test these zones. But again, you just have to weigh up, is it worth it? Does it make sense for you? But for me it didn't at the time, but reflecting on it, I can clearly see how this was an opportunity. So if price is trading in and around here, come maybe a session during the week, that would be something I'd be paying attention to, which may allow me to trade through it, is what time we're at and is there volume that may offer a push beyond that. Because clearly when we can see when price got through here, there was every chance, looking left, there's clean traffic, especially above this hourly resistance. So there was every chance that continuation could have happened prior to a pullback. And there's every chance that this pullback never came and price just continued. So that could have offered like a really nice opportunity. But we can clearly see that price just wanted to hold support above, close back inside the range, options to take trades above the highs to push on up to the upside, up into this early resistance. So exact same area as last week. I'll be looking to potentially look for opportunities this week, or keep an eye on what price does in and around for just reflecting on my outlook. So these are the two areas I'm interested in buying at, or where I feel like make a lot of sense to buy. From a seller's perspective, of course, the only other area is above here, which is from my previous weekly outlook, which is just clearing all these levels. Structure above makes sense to trade into here and continue. So if I just take that off, that's the only areas I was thinking of potentially buys that make sense for me. Sales now, looking at the daily. So these are going to be areas obviously I'm going to be paying attention to. But from a daily perspective, I was looking at, well, where makes sense to sell. And I sort of I pointed out this ray, so we can clearly see it. This confirms a higher support. Price then pulls back, and that's where we get the continuation from. So when I was looking at this, I was like, well, we held support above, and then price came to the support but reacted right off here, failed to close below, and of course reacted right on that level on Friday. So I looked at that on the 4-hour. Clearly can see that's a level of interest and a level that price, either when we get to react, close below, we can't remain below, and as soon as we get above, we react to the upside, and then as soon as we come below that again, we get some downside, and then of course we formed a higher support, or a support you could say, on Friday. So for me, I'm thinking it makes sense to sell below here. Now it's going to depend on a few things, because again, like looking at what is below here, you've got 4-hour support, which is how many pips away? 57.60. You've then got this whole area between here and here, which is a 4-hour support zone. So we're going to have to be cautious of selling into that. And then if you look at it on the lower time frames, like it doesn't look as pretty. You know, it starts to get a bit rangy in a sense. However, what I'll be paying attention to is, well, how does price close below here? What time is it? Is it leading into a volume time? Is there indications of price that volume is in the market? If so, and price can hold, like price closes below, price closes below, and price can hold structure below, and there's no reason why price can't come down to test these areas, and then of course test low here, which is going to be like, you could say, the target from a weekly perspective to the downside. What I like about this area as well is selling below this weekly resistance. So whether the week opens bullish and then we start to trade below this later on in the week, I'll be paying attention to that area. If we open and we trade below it, the price maybe comes back up, holds resistance below and continues down, that's an option. Or if we trade below, come back above, can't sustain a move above, and we start to break back down, that might be a price point to pay attention to. And if I was, say for example, I came to the market this morning, this is Monday per se, and this is what I'm looking at, I can clearly see if this is my session, it makes sense to sell below the low of the 4-hour, whether it's a breakout or it's a structured trade or whatnot. But that's sort of what I'm looking at for the downside. So that's just my 3 areas that I've pointed out this week, based on what happened last week. I'm also paying attention, like this 4-hour support zone is still very much relevant, because clearly see we tapped into this and sort of offered lower resistance and continuation, and then again we can't really sustain above it, we can't hold above it, and we sort of roll over. So these are areas I'm going to be, like this zone, and of course I'm going to pay attention to this, because again, if I'm buying or I have a bullish bias, you know, I will be cautious of buying into these areas and these zones. because again, I would be just prefer to buy away from them. But that's not to say that there won't be options in my session to catch a piece of a move and things like that, which still can be an option for me. So it's just going to depend on what price looks like on the day, how big the ranges are, is there volume and things like that. Because especially trading through zones like these, and that having volume on your side is good, because it can really make a move through these quite easy if the volume is there. Because you can easily put yourself off not taking a trade throughout these, because so many things in between. But trying to keep it really simple. But looking at last week, one thing I just want to do is just bring on my areas last week and say, well, yeah, so this area to buy above is the exact same area I'm going to be trading. So if what's this here weekly outlook? So I just want to see if the areas that I printed last week are still relevant this week. So buys above the exact same position in 074, so I've already got that marked up. Buys above here, yet still very much relevant, so I'm going to keep that on my screen just to see if we do get to that area. The sell options I had last week, or the sell points, was in and around here. Now this does make a lot of sense for me to trade below, on the basis that, say for instance, price opens up bullish and price maybe can't continue to the upside and we start to break down. Selling below this is obviously selling below this 4-hour support zone. It's selling below this support, but I would be a little bit more cautious, because we sort of have like a new range between here, here and here. So selling into a resistance may not be the best idea. So maybe wait for some form of structure to form below, whether that's something like if we start up bullish for the start of the week or whatnot, and then we start to come down and we come below this and we hold resistance below. It could be the same as just doing a range play from like one of the previous weeks, where we have some form of resistance in and around here that price is clearly struggling to break to the upside and is holding resistance below. I could confidently enter a trade here, maybe put my stop loss somewhere up here and look to play the range. And if we encroach above here, or start to maybe hold lower time frame support above, I could look to potentially close my trade. So I think that level is still very much relevant. But again, because of the price action that happened last week, there is different factors to pay attention to, because if we are above here, it doesn't make sense to just take a breakout trade because we're below this, because price could easily just react off any of this resistance and push to the upside. So more development would need to be needed here, preferably a nice close below and structure holding below, or some form of momentum and volume that I can clearly see in the market. So I'll keep that level there. I will just have to adjust the note on here just to take into consideration the structure that did form below here. So I'll have to amend that. What else could I be looking for as well? What other areas? Sales below here. Yeah. This was like last week. I didn't want to sell below when price was trading here. We're looking at the 4-hour. Looking at my session before the session, I identified I wanted to sell below here on the 4-hour because it made sense on this time frame. However, when I went to the 1-hour, there was a clear support here, so I didn't want to sell below and maybe get that, because that support's there. So I made a little ray to say below the support makes sense. So that could still be relevant going into this week, because I am saying that sales do make sense below here. But again, this price action wasn't here last week, so I will still have to be aware. Sorry, what I just said there doesn't even make sense, because this price action was there last week. But again, this might depend as well on like things like volume. on what I'm seeing in my session, because if I am trading in around here and we're breaking below with volume per se, I could just use this level here as a watch area, or just wait the price breaks below and trade below. I could then use, like if I'm trading below here, looking to target into here and beyond, I could use these areas and these support zones, these resistance zones, as areas to keep an eye on for maybe managing my position. So I think this level is very much relevant. It seems like the downside targets, or not targets, the downside price points I had last week are still very much relevant this week. And then of course the last one I had. So I'm just going to take these off just so it doesn't look so cluttered. But yeah, the last sell from last week, the sell price point was here. And again, I still think this is very much relevant too, because we can clearly see that we're failing to close above that. So looking at structure, similar again, if price comes up and maybe shows that it can't continue and puts in maybe like an RD resistance, something like this, where this shows like clear rejection, and then this candle clearly breaks down, closes right on the support but breaches it, and then we can clearly see that when we fail to hold the support, we start to break down, confirming lower resistance, then that gives opportunities to sell. So again, that could be an area to keep an eye on next week if we do come to the upside and we fail to continue and fail to sustain supports, higher supports above. Coming back below this area could offer opportunities to sell. But again, even though I'm up and above here, I'm still trading within a 4-hour support, so any downside could potentially be that. And then again as well, you've sort of got these resistances in here. So similar to what I was mentioning with the previous option, selling below here, I think rather than sell up here, I could just wait for further downside and wait to be outside of that zone. Again, it's all going to be dependent on what price is doing in the session, where we are, how it's looking, is there volume, is there momentum, and again as well, there's quite a lot of news this week. Tomorrow there's not much, a little bit of euro news during the session. Tuesday, a little bit of pound and euro news, and then we've got JPY on Wednesday. Thursday, a lot of pound news. Nothing in the session. That would be more so after the session, but might be something to take into consideration in terms of what price is doing prior. Is it maybe ranging and gearing up for a move, or is maybe this potentially going to be absorbed into the market during the session, and there might be some sort of heavy movement during the session. Friday, shit ton of euro news and pound news throughout the session. So Friday may well be a no trade day. By just looking at this, I think that's the right thing to do, depending on how my week's going as well. If I'm having a good week, there's no real reason to potentially throw away profits or take a loss or a potential loss on a Friday. And again, if the week isn't going so good, then just looking at this, probably going to be inconsistent price action. It could be an additional loss that you maybe not want to take as well. So heavy news on Friday, heavy news throughout the week as well. So got that to keep an eye on as well. But that's sort of my weekly outlook. Just areas I'm paying attention to which make sense to me, buy and sell. Last week's points of interest in terms of zones, buying and selling above or below those, and that's just about it really. So yeah, that's it for me, folks. So we'll sort of reflect on this next weekend and see what price action did in and around these areas, and was there trade opportunities. But yeah, that's sort of all I'm looking at really going into next week.